There's something which I found very interesting that I saw recently when it comes to Avalanche, and let me explain why in today's video, even though I first want to clarify, I'm not a financial advisor, nothing I say is financial advice, and I'm not telling anyone to do anything, this is purely just my perspective. However, I recently saw that when it comes to Avalanche ETF holdings, they were approaching 1% of the token supply. Now, we have to take a look at it. There's 3 spot Avalanche ETFs in the US, and back on April 16th, it saw net inflows of approximately $5.26 million. So when I take a look at that right there, again, the ETFs at that moment in time held almost 1% of AVAX market cap, basically. Now, when I take a look at that, people like to say, well, like, who cares? But I think this is right here a step in the right direction. Now, I think over time, if let's say a larger percentage was maybe held through ETFs, I think that could hypothetically create a little bit more stability and kind of less of those intense swings like that. Like for instance, we take a look at in the case of the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs, we take a look at what they've done when it comes to the price charts. Granted, people like to say, well, the swings are still kind of massive. True, but when it comes to Bitcoin and Ethereum, there has been a little bit more stability, I think, when compared to the past, and just kind of more sort of prolonged better sentiments, I think, in general, despite the pullback that we're seeing as of right now. So over time, I think those Avalanche ETFs could maybe hypothetically see that, but of course, to a lesser extent, just because Avalanche is nowhere near that massive. But still, seeing 3 Avalanche ETFs in the US, I think that's pretty impressive. And of course, the most famous one being Grayscale's Avalanche ETF, and then we also saw VanEck's Avalanche ETF, and then we saw also Bitwise's Avalanche ETF on the New York Stock Exchange. But of course, the Avalanche and VanEck ETFs are on NASDAQ. But yeah, besides that point though, when I take a look at, in the case of Avalanche, people like to say, but why didn't this move the needle in a sense? Like, why is this not a needle mover in terms of the price charts? Well, it's because the market sentiment is just not doing so good as of right now when it comes to this space in particular. In a sense where, because AVAX is kind of massive, being ranked 23rd as of right now within this space in terms of size, or should I say in terms of market cap, because of that, it just can't really do these random independent rallies of its own out of nowhere like that. Usually it needs a pretty massive change in market sentiment just due to the fact that the market cap as of right now is pretty massive. Keep in mind, the current market cap of AVAX is around 4 billion. Again, around 4 billion. That's really massive actually in the grand scheme of things. And it has around 160,000 holders. So it's a pretty massive project, one of the most popular layer 1 blockchains out there. And a lot of people out there like to say, but again, who cares about all this nonsense? But if we think about it, at a time like especially right now, seeing again back on April 16th, those 3 Avalanche ETF holdings I mentioned before, making up almost 1% of the supply, basically, of the token supply, I should say. I think that right there is a pretty massive milestone considering the market conditions. Now, if this was like during an altcoin season, or let's say the markets were doing a lot better, okay, then yeah, I get why that may be an underwhelming figure. But at a time like this, that's pretty impressive. It's like, for instance, imagine running a marathon using Timberland boots and then still placing like 3rd or 2nd place. That's pretty impressive. Okay, sure, maybe they didn't win the race, but that's pretty impressive considering they were using Timberland boots. One could only imagine what they could do if they actually used running shoes. That's kind of the analogy that I would sometimes like to think about when it comes to AVAX. If we take a look at AVAX historically, we'll see that when it comes to its all-time high, it was around $146, but that was back in 2021. I mean, that was a different time. And quite frankly, I don't even ever need it to go back to that point. Anywhere close, actually, I don't need it to go back there. You know what? I don't even need it to go half of that. The thing is, back in December of 2024, AVAX was around $52. Right now, we're over 5 times lower than that. If it just goes back to $50, the thing for me is, I have like really nothing to be upset or angry about at that point. And I don't think that was even an altcoin season, by the way, back in December 2024. The thing about Avalanche is it may not be the most popular layer 1 blockchain out there, but I don't really need it to either. If it could just go back to that point, I have nothing to complain about. You know what? Even if it just goes back to September 2025, around $35 at the time. We're over 3 times lower than that. Do I have anything to complain about at that point? Also, no. And does anyone really think that September 2025 was an altcoin season? You know, actually, $35 at one point was considered a little bit bearish when it comes to AVAX. So it's not like it's a dynamic thing we've never ever seen before. That's actually not the case. We just saw that last year, basically. And that wasn't even the all-time high of what it reached last year. But besides that point, AVAX's all-time low is approximately $2.80. To be a little bit specific, it's actually allegedly $2.79, but you know what, for simplicity's sake, let's just take a look at $2.80. I mean, it's just a 1 cent difference anyways, but yeah, besides that point, if I take a look at AVAX right now at around $9, if we take a look at it just historically, right, is it closer to its historical floor, or is it closer to its historical ceiling? Or should I say its historical top? Let's just think about this. Again, like I mentioned before, the all-time high for AVAX was around $146. The all-time low around $2.80. If we just do some basic math, $9 approximately is of course way closer to $2.80 as opposed to around $146. So is AVAX closer to its historical floor, or is it closer to its historical ceiling? Based on just that historical data that I've seen, it's actually closer to its historical floor. I mean, could AVAX go lower? I mean, I can't control anything. Who knows? Maybe if the market sentiment wasn't doing good and it kept, let's say, not doing good moving forward. Okay, maybe, right? But from what I can see, it's just closer to its floor than it is to its historical ceiling. So, okay, people like to ask me why my dollar cost averaging as of right now. Now, I don't have to, but the reason why I'm doing it is just because I still like the project. And also, if it's historically closer to its floor as opposed to its ceiling, I mean, because I'm intending to hold anyways and I don't want to exit, I'm just not too concerned because, again, it's just so close to its kind of historical floor. That's the way to take a look at it. However, even besides that, people like to tell me, but when it comes to Avalanche, no one really cares about it. Take a look at the listings, though. It's kind of impressive, and especially during an altcoin season or if the market sentiment did become better, listings sometimes do matter a lot. Just take a look at Dogecoin, Shiba Inu, Cardano's native token called ADA, Solana. Take a look at what the listings did to them historically. And also by extension, AVAX to a certain extent, right? Avalanche, take a look at the pretty good listings that it had back in 2021. Sometimes listings do matter because during an altcoin season or during a market sentiment where it's a lot better, sometimes convenience does matter. And when I take a look at just what do people even often look for in terms of a layer on blockchain, they usually want something that's fast. They also want something that's usually scalable. And also on top of that, they want something with gas fees that are not ridiculous, right? People usually like low gas fees. The thing when it comes to Avalanche is I'm not speaking on anyone's behalf, but I personally do notice those traits. So it's not like Avalanche is so bad fundamentally and it's just driven through kind of hype or something like that. That's actually not the case to me. I actually like the fundamentals. Granted, is it ever going to become more popular than Ethereum? I think probably, of course not, but it doesn't need to. This is just my opinion. Like for instance, does Volvo need to overtake Toyota? I don't think so. I mean, it's already doing pretty good as is. That's just sometimes my mentality. It's like, for instance, if the Rivian R2 never outsells the Tesla Model Y, like, does that even really matter? I mean, it'd be pretty cool if it did, but it doesn't need to in order to be considered a hypothetical success, in my opinion. But of course, we'll wait and see what happens when it comes to that. But in this case, I also don't ever see a need for Avalanche to ever overtake Ethereum. If AVAX could just maintain its kind of current positioning, you know, again, being ranked 23rd in the world, heading into a hypothetical altcoin season or heading just into better market sentiments, then, I mean, what else would I even really be worried about? Not to mention, if I take a look at this space, I don't mind waiting. And I want to stay dedicated with the projects that I already believe in, that I'm already familiar with. I'm not going to try to chase what happened to SanDisk, you know, the stock, of course, right? I'm not going to try to chase other market trends. I'm not going to try to chase random microcaps that randomly make it. I'm not going to try to chase that. The thing is, sure, because a microcap has, of course, a low market cap, If let's say it has like a market cap of 50,000, even if it just randomly became 500,000, previously it was 10 times lower than before. And then people oftentimes post about it and all that. But AVAX is not a microcap. Even if let's say 300 million was added to the market cap of AVAX, it wouldn't even move at 10%. That's the thing. And personally for me, I always hear about these stories about these random microcaps that quote unquote make it, but I don't hear the other stories of the 10, 15, or however many thousand that don't make it. That's the thing. For one that makes it, a lot of others probably don't when it comes to these microcaps in terms of these projects that have a kind of smaller market cap. I don't want to get cooked with like 2,000 projects just to find one. I don't want to do that. This is just personally my perspective, so I like to stay on my own lane. I'm not going to try to chase other trends, that's the thing. However, I'll be sure to make more videos moving forward when it comes to AVAX, and I'll be sure to make more updates, so hopefully y'all stay tuned for that. I want to say thank you for watching, I greatly appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see y'all in the next one. I'm out, peace, bye.